Hey everybody, it's Catherine or Mrs. Cronall, and I'm here with Claire and Marwan. We're looking after Marwan tonight because it's bonfire night, so
he's a bit scared.
He's a little bit restless. So we're gonna keep him company, and hopefully he'll get distracted by all our wonderful discussion on the next. I think it's 7 chapters. Yes, 7 chapters today, including probably the most analyzed chapter in the series, I would say. Definitely the most discussed, wouldn't you, Claire?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, we're going all the way from chapter 33 to chapter 39 in A Game of Thrones, and obviously, and I never remember to say this, and then I watch it back and I keep forgetting. Obviously, Claire's channel is linked down below. I'm such a shit YouTuber, I always forget to say that. I've also linked AU's channel down below because he regularly pops in, and him and Anne did a live Stranger Things season 2 discussion last night, so I've linked his channel down below. So if you're into Stranger Things, you will probably want to check that out because they had a great discussion on that last night. So yeah, we're starting with Eddard 8, and we have 3 Ed chapters in here, so almost 50% of our discussion will be Ed based. And we also have a Dany chapter. We haven't had a Dany chapter in a while. So yeah, so Ed 8. So I didn't have much to say about this chapter. What about you, Claire?
So this is the chapter that
he resigns his hand over because he doesn't agree with Robert wanting to assassinate the Targaryens.
That's right. So this old argument comes up again, and ultimately they both stand their ground, and Ned resigns for a couple of chapters. There's a couple of quotes here in the dialogue. I mean, you really get the sense that Ned is completely an island at this point. There is just so much going on in the background, and like cloak and daggers, that he must be feeling that he just simply can't trust anybody. So you'd think he'd want to be more on a level with Robert, because that's kind of like his familiar territory. So it must just, I mean, it was brave. It must feel like completely, you know, he must feel so alone in this situation. But there's a couple of things that he says here. He refers to when they're having the argument in the small council, where only Barristan, bless him, Barristan the Bold and his loyalty, only Barristan sides with Ned. In fact, there's quite a lot of reference to being a knight and vows and the importance of the knighthood generally. So, you know, you get lots of references to Barristan and the Kingsguard, like old and new. So we get a lot of these concepts beginning around loyalty, and there are quite a few quotes in here about where does loyalty start and end. And so back to the small council in this chapter. There's a question that I've got. Ned references this argument being, and this threat with Daenerys wanting to kill Daenerys and Viserys as a shadow of a shadow 20 years removed. And I just underlined that because I thought 20 years? That's strange, because all of this happened, it was more like 14, 15 years. So what happened 5 years before? Is he just rounding it up? It just seemed a very strange thing for him to say. I mean, first of all,
it's one of those things. Did George get the numbers wrong? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a funny thing, and again, it might just be slipped in there. We do know, and we have to be aware while we're doing this reread, that George R.R. Martin has admitted himself he likes to bury little clues, and he's very aware of the fact that fans of this series will reread, will go back and reread, and exactly as we're doing now, Kat and I are doing, we're discovering different things as we go along. And a lot of it, I think, you just read something and take it for granted the first time, the first 6 times even. And then there are just some things that jump out at me at the dialogue in this particular reread. I think it's probably because I know we're sitting down each week and analysing it. So I don't know if that's why certain things are kind of jumping out at me. But 20, so I kind of go quite mechanical and scientific in my mind. 20 years rather than 14, 15. So did something happen 5 years previous to Robert's rebellion? Well, if we go back to the beginning of the book, Ned's age is referenced as 35. So if you go back further than that, to him referencing something, a shadow of a shadow 20 years removed. I mean, just the word shadow has reference to, I know that Bar de Porto did a video a few years ago about this particular, you know, the reference to shadows, and that shadows are ghosts of people that have passed. Did something happen in the Vale 20 years ago that we don't know about, that hasn't been referenced in the books thus far? It was just a very strange thing to kind of throw into it. I don't know if you got anything from that.
It's so funny because I actually had the same thought for the next chapter, which is where we get all the description of the Vale.
Right, okay.
And most of what Kat knows is what she's learned from Ned.
Yeah.
And it made me, I had a few questions about the Vale when we get to the Cat chapter and Ned and Robert's time at the Vale.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that you say that, because maybe you're right. Maybe something happened at the Vale.
And again, a shadow of a shadow.
Yeah, and also, sorry, go on. Yeah.
It just, I don't know. It just makes me think that something happened when they were wards at the Vale. We know that Ned, and we know that Lyanna knows that that Robert fathered his first bastard in the Vale. So is it that? Is it just that Maya was conceived around that time? I mean, Ned would have been 15. I'm guessing that Robert is roughly around the same age. But I don't understand when this comes out, when they're arguing about whether or not it's a moral thing to kill the remaining Targaryens. And then he talks of a shadow 20 years removed.
And
it's just really strange.
Yeah, he's talking about he feels an axe over his neck.
Mm.
And you get that sense throughout this chapter, and actually throughout this whole section, all the way to Eddard 10, that Robert doesn't feel secure in his position on the throne.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. It's very strange. It's a very strange, and I think you're right. I mean, he does make it to be read over and over again. And we've talked before in the last few weeks about how it's no accident the way the chapters are put together. So the fact that it is the Vale that we're going to see next.
Definitely. There are little clues that link together, I'm sure. So they're referring to, and again, he refers to Dany's pregnancy as the shadow of an unborn child. This is what you're panicking about, Robert. It's ridiculous. You know, this, if you're worried about the spawn of Daenerys, then this is going to be another 15 years. At the moment, it's just an unborn child. The other quote in all of this kind of exchange and argument before Ned resigns is, again, referring to Daenerys, but when he says that, he's using his kind of northern loyalty, that he should look her in the eyes before you kill her. You owe her that much at least. And I just thought, what the heck did Robert send somebody to kill Lyanna because he couldn't have her himself? That it really feels like it's not just that northern loyalty, that it's like, if you don't send an assassin after that. If you really feel so strongly about this, look her in the eyes before you kill her. You owe her that much. It feels to me like there's quite a bit of built up resentment there from Ned. And I feel like it relates to Lyanna. I feel like he's not just saying this as like a piece of advice, you know, be a man and do this, look her in the eyes before you kill her. You owe her that much at least. It's that bit that makes me think, did Robert have something, you know, or is it just because Ned simply blames Robert for the whole rebellion and the fact that Lyanna died, as you know, his sister who he loved died as a result of this? It's just that kind of look her in the eyes, you owe her that at least. And it's like this, that just really, it just really made me think about Lyanna. And I, again, like I said, could Robert have done something really stupid, like he loved her that much, or he was obsessed with her that much? Did he? Was he ultimately responsible because he wasn't there to look her in the eyes when she died?
Well, it could be as well. Bran is playing on Ned's mind a lot, and the fact that someone sent an assassin and didn't look his own son in his eye, and he doesn't want to suspect Robert, but Robert inadvertently probably led to that happening. And just as you're saying that, like, what? Like, is Ned wrong as well? Like, he doesn't really owe Dany anything. I mean, the fact that Dany was able to get out of Westeros, like, she got her life. Like, Robert doesn't owe her anything. I mean, if you're going to go with has the right to be on the throne, but actually, now that you've made me rethink some things, because I've always thought that Ned went to King's Landing to kind of protect his family, and in part to protect Robert because he was worried about what the Lannisters would do. But maybe he's in King's Landing to protect the kingdom against Robert. Because, I mean, when you get the description of the Vale and it goes on and on and on through Kat's eyes later on, Kat, who doesn't take in that kind of visual description any other time, it's like, what the hell were these young guys doing up in the Vale? Like, what did you do to occupy your time when you were up in the Vale as a young kid? And what would that do to you psychologically? I mean, for Ned, like, he's surrounded by Knights of the Vale. He gets a lot of honor. But then we also get through Tyrion's chapter later that the Knights of the Vale, there's a lot of pervy knights up there. So that's obviously where Robert gets some of his pervy tendencies. But yeah, you're right. There's something not quite fitting or sitting well with the Robert-Ned relationship right now. And
the timing and the references that are thrown into things that happened at certain times. What happened 20 years ago? It's strange. The whole Vale creeps me out. Actually, there's an element of it that's just
totally
very creepy. I think the only other thing really that, just to reference, because we've mentioned it a couple of times, that obviously Ned, he mentions that he has sent a letter to Stannis, finally, but he hasn't had any response.
But his letter is to request his presence or something. It's not like to demand his presence. Like, it's just like, oh, would you mind coming up? No,
just clarifying a few things for me.
Well, he also says at the start of this council meeting that that everybody else is wiser around the table. Like, I mean, like, at least feign it for yourself. Like, you've got to kind of like,
He's never set leadership, and you know, I mean, not only is he the Lord of Winterfell, but he's also Warden of the North, and it never seems to really sit well with Ned. And I think he resents his older brother for many things, but one of them being, you left me in this position. I was a second son. I wasn't ready for this. I shouldn't have been having to deal with any of this. And none of that would have, you know, he wasn't a boy in the Vale with Robert thinking, you're going to be king one day and you're going to name me, you know, the Warden of the North. It, like, they would have just grown up thinking that they were lords second sons. No, Robert was the eldest, wasn't he? Of course. But yeah, it's just very strange.
Yeah, there's a couple of things as well. Varys says that what is it he says? Yeah, we who presume to rule must do vile things for the good of the realm. Like it's not the king. He says we who presume to rule, and it's this, like, Robert clearly feels inadequate because we're told in this chapter he didn't fear Rhaegar, but he fears Rhaegar's potential nephew, the fetus. So why wasn't he afraid of Rhaegar, but he is afraid of a baby? So it's almost like intellectually Robert knows that he isn't legitimate or doesn't feel legitimate, and too old now to fight for the crown. So he can't intellectually win that battle to keep it. And he's surrounded himself by shadows, which is ironic. Like Stannis, Varys, Littlefinger, and Renly, and Pycelle, and the Lannisters. There's all these shadows that have like eyes on the prize. Is that your fireworks?
You hear that?
Yeah.
It's all right.
Is he all right?
It's okay. He's just trotting around, not knowing what. That is really loud.
Hey, AU, how are you? We did the chat. And Marco and Sonny, how are you guys? Are the cats all right as well, or do they even?
Oh,
care?
Where are the cats?
They're
upstairs.
Yeah, Asher will be in your room.
Yeah, they'll be under the bed somewhere.
Oh,
that's
no,
really loud.
it's so horrible. The hand is inside having coffee, AU, so he's fine. He's safe from the fireworks. Claire's trying to look after Marwan. So that was just the irony that he's afraid of Dany's baby. And the other thing, obviously, there's a couple of lines here. Ned, that famous line, Ned dreaming of snow lately. And the other thing I took note of, and I think everybody takes note of in this chapter, is Littlefinger and the Faceless Men, makes mention of the Faceless Men, and seems to have a good idea of what the Faceless Men are about, and says that titles are cheap, but the Faceless Men are expensive. Just something that I'm pretty sure I know the answer to, but just to confirm, Littlefinger is trapping Ned at the end of this chapter, right? He is has he set that up with Jaime so that Jaime will know where they're going, or is it just a coincidence?
Good point. He definitely doesn't want him to leave because he's not created enough chaos, I'm guessing, yet.
And it's so convenient that that's the time that he's found the brothel.
Yeah,
he knew where that brothel was all along. So.
Oh yeah. He's just pulling that out as a, that's his safe bet that Ned will want to continue investigating the mystery.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Actually, he does seem to know quite a bit about the Faceless Men, including the price of hiring a faceless man. So, and that just made me think, how does Littlefinger know the price? Well,
I mean, the Fingers are quite close to Bravos, so they would have a lot of contact with the Bravosi. But to actually know how much unless you've ever needed an assassin, why would you ever know the price?
Isn't the price different for different? It
he
depends.
says that as well. He says that they're expensive anyway, let alone to kill a Targaryen or something. I think he makes reference to that. So yeah, how does he know so much about it? I mean, it's probably they're such a shadowy organization, and for anyone to ever have used them, I'm sure there's some sort of pact that you have to make with the Faceless Men. Listen,
I thought you were going to
talk. What?
I thought you were going to say like a Faceless Men aftercare package.
Yeah.
It's we all come together and kind of talk about our experiences of hiring an assassin.
FMA.
But has he used a Faceless Man before, Littlefinger? I mean he's been up to so many things. It just makes you wonder.
That's the big tinfoil theory that he is a faceless man. Isn't there that theory as well?
Yeah.
I don't.
This is the
believe in
thing
that.
with the faceless men that I struggle with. Because Arya is one of my favourite characters. I really wanted to kind of study a lot more a few years ago about the faceless men and what they were about and the origins. And it just, I just reached an impasse when I realised that anyone could be a faceless man because of the concept of you can just change your face. So it's just, you can drive yourself crazy with, could this be a faceless man? Could this be a faceless man? It's the same thing as, I don't know whether it is a plot device that's been put in there deliberately. I mean, you know more about sort of the technicalities of literature, but there do seem to be several kind of ideas that just end up having you spinning round in circles, and the faceless men is one. Another one is mystery Targaryens. You know, everyone seems to be a secret Targaryen, and there are just these little things that are burrowed into the story that just end up making you sort of whirl round and your head spin.
And he has to be so careful about using them, because he can't have that, like, being part of a massive twist in the end, because people won't buy it. After years, decades of talking about them, about these theories, people won't buy them. AU says, but that's only true if they are there temporarily. I'm not sure what he means by that. What do you mean by that, AU? Does he mean if you're with the faceless men temporarily, that anybody can be there? Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah. So anybody, and actually that's a good point, because that's what I was thinking as well. Anyone can be a faceless man, but to actually go fully through with the training, we don't know what that takes. And he means as a character, you can only be there temporarily. That's true. But the other thing is that the faceless men, there must be some sort of a pact of silence. Like, I don't know. So, spoiler alert for Winds of Winter, but I don't know if Arya leaving, you know, what the implications are if she doesn't play their game. I mean, I'd imagine they'll have to go after her, right? There's like, I don't know. But anyway, we're getting off topic.
Yeah,
Sorry.
there's loads of theories about that, about whether or not they wanted her there in the first place.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And actually, that actually does just end this chapter very nicely. There is a line that Ned says. He says, "Mercy is never a mistake." And I know he's talking about mercy, but it did make me think about Arya. All right, so we are on then to Cat 6. And I forgot how much I really liked this chapter. As she goes up to the Vale, and just the description of the Vale, it's so gothic and it's really scary. There's something very strange about the Vale, apart from the fact that and I think for me it's the most fantastical of all of the castles that we see, just because it seems to defy the laws of physics. So yeah, so that for me just seems a bit strange. This chapter opens with Kat saying sometimes she felt as though her heart had turned to stone, and it made me wonder if George R. R. Martin, for better or for worse, has been doing a lot of talking in between the books, in between Dance of Dragons and Winds of Winter, about the nature of whites, or the idea of whites, and it just made me wonder, does that journey towards becoming a white only start when you're killed, or does it start before you're even killed? Does it depend on the kind of life or the kind of decisions that you made, the type of white you become? And it feels like we've talked about this since the beginning, since Cat 1, that her heart has been hardening, and her decision process doesn't seem to be entirely her own, in my opinion, throughout. So it just made me wonder, does that kind of define who you are as a white, and what should we be looking out for other people who are potentially going to be whited? And yeah, there's a couple of things. Kat is missing a lot of red flags with Lysa, which will come up in Tyrion's chapter later on. One of the first things we're told by Brendan, which we get to meet Brendan in this chapter, which I love. He's one of my favorite characters. We're told that Lysa wants to keep all the Vale swords around her. She won't even spare one sword from the Vale. And I think that's a massive red flag. Clearly, she feels guilty, or she feels like something could happen and she might be hunted, or someone might come looking for her. So for me, that's a red flag. The fact that she's keeping herself well protected. There's another red flag with Tyrion later on, an even bigger one, I think. And yeah, that was the only other question I had, really. We talked about what kind of environment this was for Ned and Robert to grow up in. I'd love to know what Jon Arryn was really like. I'd love to know what kind of guy he was, because I don't think living in this castle, if you're either able to get up there and that's fine and you're like amazing, or you have to go up with the turnips. Like there's no. Yeah. It's either you're like climbing Mount Everest, or you're completely getting up there in a shameful way. Like there's no middle ground. And I have a few questions about Hoster, Tully, and Brendan. So they never got on, we hear, and I believe there's suggestions that Brendan Tully might be gay. And that might be something later on that we get more hints of. That might be something that he didn't like. But it seems that Hoster Tully stopped talking to Brendan as soon as he went to the Vale with Lysa. And it made me wonder, does Hoster Tully disown Lysa because she's not a virgin, or because she loses her virginity? And I say that because Kat also has this really adverse reaction to yet another bastard in this chapter, and I wonder, does she get that from Hoster, this like kind of idea of bastards and kind of this very holier than thou attitude, I think, high moral stance on the nature of virginity and bastards. And yeah,
well, if there is some bigger plot going on, if there is a bigger plot of like ambitions with this kind of level of this kind of potential Illuminati from years back that we were talking about last week, the driving force would be marriage, legitimate children, legitimate children, and that seems to, the ambition is there, the words are there, family, duty, honor. It feels as though Kat's on some kind of a mission, or she was sent to Winterfell on some kind of a mission, to kind of spread out this kind of ambition geographically. And I suppose if that's what your driving force is, then anybody having a bastard within that contained bubble would be just out. You're out, just go. Just, we need to cover this up and then just go. And it's because she does, I've made a note of that. She has, she's immediately like, it feels as though she's warming to this girl, and then it's almost like you can see a recoil at the displeasure at being told that Maya is a bastard, and she then immediately feels angry but guilty about Jon being at the wall. And again, later on in the conversation, when Maya was talking about her plans to marry one of the Vale Lords, and Kat kind of scoffs at this, and it seems to be, again, possibly instilled by Hoster, that she knows a lot about, and it seems to be very important to her, that nobility marries nobility, and there's a set way of doing things. And she describes Winterfell as being bigger than River Run, Winterfell and the Starks being bigger than River Run and the Tullys, and it's this ambition, this kind of drive that I do think she's, whether there was an actual here's your mission, Kat, you must go forth and do, make sure that you carrying the Tully seed up north, and that we're kind of, because again, if you look at her children, and her children look like Tullys, and it's possibly. However, there's something in here that I thought, we know that the Blackfish and hostages don't speak anymore, but when Cat is again constantly reminiscing about her childhood in Riverrun, she talks about how her father was away quite a lot on like military campaigns, and the Blackfish was there. He was more present than Hoster, and it feels as though the Blackfish would have been more of a kind of father figure to her.
I actually had
on an emotional,
surrogate mother written down. I thought it was more motherly.
Yeah. There's definitely more of an emotional connection there. Maybe she got her orders from her father, but she got that kind of family love and connection through Blackfish, through the Blackfish. But yeah, what have I got here? Not a great deal. I mean, just the the very beginning of the chapter. When she's chastising Tyrion and she's saying 6 men died to bring you here, and I've just put, oh, Cat. You know, it's like she's completely clueless about the impact of her actions, and she's blaming everybody else. Just silly things like she's thanks Marillion for coming with them, and it's like the way it's written, it's like she feels as though she owes him something. She feels as though she owes Marillion something, and I'm like, well, you don't. You owe him nothing. Or the only reason that you've got him hanging around is because it reminds you again of your bloody childhood. That we're constantly, you know. I mean, there's one part where she almost, because I've put in my notes, perhaps she's becoming a Stark at last, when she almost says winter is coming. But I think, yeah, the ascent of the era is just the I mean, for somebody who's really not comfortable with heights, and I'll talk about that when we get to the Tyrion chapter later on with the sky cells. But it's a hazardous trip up there, and she's having to rely on Maya. And so I was just going to say, in my notes, I've said that Cat has been saved and guided by a bastard of all people.
Yep.
And I just think that in my mind means that Cat and Jon, in some kind of way, are destined to meet again, whether that's both as whites or...
I don't know if you caught this line: an enemy intent on the Eyrie would have to fight his way from stone step by step, while rocks and arrows rain down from snow above. And stone and snow are the name of 2 towers, but because they're both capitalized there, it instantly made me think of Stoneheart and Jon, and this idea that she will have to, I think they have to come back together.
Jules is here.
Oh, hi, Jules. Jules stopped at chapter 9. Well, you know, that's fine. Don't worry, Jules. We still love you. And AU said, like Syria and Jacqueline were only around for a short time and they're gone. Yeah, that's true. That people come and go. That's very true. The other thing I actually wanted to add here, do you think we'll see the Vale again in the series? Because it's pretty much like unless he does a massive flash forward to beyond winter, it's going to be pretty much impossible to get up there, right? Unless you have a dragon,
we do see the Vale again.
No, I mean after they come down from after Sansa leaves the Vale. Because it's so difficult to get up there. So the only way I can imagine them getting up there is by dragon. But it's one of those places that he spends so much time describing it, and it's just I feel like it's just one of his best locations.
It is very gothic
and everything. It's brilliant. But The other thing I wanted to mention, and this is a bit of a Preston Jacobs nod, the ultimate tinfoil theorist, just Rob and Aaron hearing voices. It just always makes me think of Preston. All right, so then we're on to another Ed chapter already. And this Ed chapter is where Ned and Littlefinger go to the brothel, and they're greeted by Jamie as they leave. So anything on this chapter?
Well, yes, this is where the attack takes place. I think around the vicinity of the Tower of the Hand. But before that, we get this trip to the brothel, or the audio version that I'm listening to on YouTube. I don't know. It's a woman who's narrating it, and I don't know where she's from, but she says brothel instead of brothel, which makes me laugh every time I hear it. Brothel. So yeah, so he finds Barra. I just, again, it's seeing a baby, being reminded about Lyanna, and I mean, he's clearly having quite a lot of dreams at the moment. Again, that just makes me wonder, why is this happening now? What was the trigger for all these dreams that he's having now? Yeah, he thinks about his vows and secrets and keeping promises. Yes, the main thing that I've got in this here is that, considering that the theory is Rhaegar somehow kidnapped or abducted Lyanna against her will. That's one theory. Another one is they kind of ran off together in this fairy tale. Oh, I've met my prince. Whatever happened, and whatever thoughts and memories Ned has when he's having that final conversation with his sister, and whatever part Rhaegar plays in this, whether it's nefarious or not, even in these early thoughts and rememberings from Ned, he doesn't seem to have held any hatred at all for Rhaegar. No, I mean, if you think about on the level of Robert and the weird kind of, childhood kind of, it's like Jackie magazine fantasy romance that he makes up. It's just crazy the way Robert thinks about it.
I haven't thought about Jackie magazine in I don't know how long. Oh my god. Brilliant reference.
Oh, but he doesn't seem to. I mean, in fact, he's going to a brothel, and he knows that clearly, because there's a baby there that's been fathered by Robert, he knows that Robert frequents brothels, and he kind of juxtaposes that thinking with Rhaegar would never have found himself in a place. He probably never would have visited brothels. So he's kind of pitting Robert against Rhaegar in terms of like which one of them is the stand-up kind of guy. And he seems to be falling on the side of Rhaegar, which is it's very unusual when you go back and think about, you think about everybody's theories about it based on Robert's hatred of Rhaegar. But at the same time, Ned seems to be quite ambivalent. If anything, he seems to stack Rhaegar up as like, much more of a kind of moral stand-up character than Robert. So I don't know. I thought that was a bit strange.
Yeah, I totally agree. The other thing I thought was strange is he said he thought of promises he'd made to Lyanna as she lay dying, and the price he paid for them, or the price he paid to keep them. So apart from the men he lost at the Tower of Joy, actually because he lost them before the promise was kept. So what price does he pay to keep that promise?
Well, I mean, you could look at that and say the price is he's had to raise somebody else's child. But you wouldn't really put that in the context of the price you have to. This kind of reminds me of the Manderleys and that, you know, the whole a debt we can never repay to the Starks, a price that was paid that can never, you know, we can never repay this debt. And it's like, what did they do that made you feel throughout history that your house will never ever ever be able to repay this debt? And I don't know, it's a funny old thing when you think about the price of the, you know, the price of something is usually quite negative, isn't it?
And yeah, and is it that his honor, his reputation is damaged? Is that what gives him this, like, he feels very insecure when he's on the small council because he doesn't have that to fall back on, because in his head he's thinking, oh, everybody thinks I fathered a bastard.
Yeah,
is that like I feel like yeah, I can't really make sense of it. And when you just coming off the other cat chapter, it makes them seem very incompatible, because I don't think Cat would ever say she's paying a price for a promise she kept to a family member, because for her that's duty. That's where the honor is, keeping a promise, and regardless of what the rest of the world think, that's where the honor is. So yeah, it's just or maybe Cat, maybe it's the price he had to pay with his relationship, but I mean they still had a load of kids, so it's not like I don't know.
I mean, there are other you know, less well-known theories that Ned was perhaps previously married and had a child with somebody else, and that, you know, before Cat. There's all sorts of theories that relate to this, but it's just interesting that Ned seems to be quite ambivalent. It seems as though something's happened prior to Robert's rebellion that we don't know about, that Ned has problems with, that he feels he paid a price for, or, you know, there's something there that I think we just need to kind of bear that in mind.
And not to talk of the show, but I'm not talking of the show really, but I will say that one of the things that HBO are interested in is a prequel with Robert's Rebellion. And like, there's a lot there, but in order for it to even be a runner as a show idea, there must be more there than we think, because and I think there's more coming, some more fallout prior to Robert's Rebellion. There's more there between Ned and Cat and Brandon and like all of these other characters that we hear mentioned, and Rhaegar as well. And
I think there were plans. I think there were plans in place by the fathers of the characters. You know, Tywin, Hoster, that generation. I think there were plans set in place and in motion, and Robert and that generation messed it all up, and people were matched with other people. It was all set in place, but it didn't work out that way. And
maybe in an effort to keep Tywin at bay, because the story of what Tywin does to the Rains must have sent shivers throughout the other houses in the kingdom. That is probably, for the time, the worst thing that anyone in a house did at that time. Worse than like Rhaegar taking the daughter of the Starks. I mean, in her family. The other thing actually I meant to say in the last chapter as well, we don't really know how Hoster Tully feels about Jon Arryn, and I just think we start off with this mystery of Jon Arryn's death. I think it's going to come back again, I think, in the series. And I think there's a lot of mystery around that character. Like you said, he's one of the Illuminati. And I also don't think that Robin is his. Robin is his. And I wondered, was he gay? Is that why Brendan went there? Did they have some sort of relationship? This is very tinfoil. I know, I've absolutely no evidence for this. But he was quite old when he married Lysa. so he kind of took in wards. I know he's the head honcho at the Vale or whatever, so it's not unusual for him to take in wards, but the fact that he did when he was an unmarried man is a bit strange, maybe.
Yeah, that is strange. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it just made me wonder about him as well. Sorry to go back, but the only other thing I took from this chapter is, why does he take the blame for Cat?
Yeah, I know. I know.
I can't. He doesn't have to do that. He could just say, "Oh well, you don't know that she's taken him. You don't know for sure. I think there's something else going on. Let's sit down and talk about this. You know, I'm trying to hear back from her or whatever. You know, like, I don't know. There's some. He's so poor at diplomacy, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. He
lying.
didn't play that well at all.
Yeah.
The note that I've made is that, and I don't know whether this is just a confusion again, talking about a TV show, with it being something from the TV show, but I was actually quite shocked when I realised that the injury that Ned got was because his horse fell on him. Because I was saying to Stuart, in the TV show, because I had said, how did Ned injure himself at King's Landing with that confrontation with Jaime and everything? He said, oh, his horse fell on him. And I said, how did you remember that? Because for some strange reason in my mind, Jaime did actually stab him in the leg or something like that. And I don't know if that's from the TV show or whether it's just something that yeah. What happened in the TV show?
Jaime is much nicer in the TV show. A fight breaks out between the Starks and the Lannister men, and one of the Jaime wants to take on Ed, like in one-to-one combat, but one of the Lannister men takes him out by stabbing his calf
from behind.
And Jaime's really pissed off. I think he may even hit the Lannister guy, but it's very different, and I think it's supposed to win sympathy for Jaime,
right?
For the audience from season 1. Otherwise, we're going to hate him. But we're supposed to kind of have this conflicted kind of idea of Jaime. In actual fact, he's really nasty. Like, he doesn't even fight Ed. He just goes off. Like,
yeah, he just rides off and says.
No, the horse thing is. I think it's one of those things that stands out to me because, I just wonder how he's even able to survive that, because he shatters, he breaks all the bones in his legs, and at that time, you know, like, not that it would kill you, but it would definitely reduce your mobility and quality of life significantly.
Yeah.
So does it play into his decisions later on? Because he's so blinded with pain and stuff. Like, it's much worse than the injury he gets in the show.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like you say, it's completely crushed his leg. But it again, I hope this doesn't happen a lot during the reread, where I've got something fixed in my mind that actually is from the bloody TV show. But that surprised me when I realised, because I can't remember that happening when I've read it previously, that it was his horse that fell on him and broke his leg. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I do have a few questions about Jaime when we get to Ed 10, actually. But yeah, so is there anything else you want on that chapter, or?
No, I think we can move on to Dany next.
Dany, yeah. We haven't seen Dany in a while. I've just spotted something that I did want to say. That chapter ends with the Red Keep looking like it's the color of blood for Ed, which I thought was really nice foreshadowing. And also very nice for the introduction into Dany's chapter, where we get a lot of references to blood again, and the blood of the dragon, and also to Vaes Dothrak, where blood is not allowed to be spilled. And yeah, we get a lot about Vaes Dothrak, lots of stuff about the dragon and the eggs moving potentially, or the baby moving at least. I kind of think that the eggs probably moved a little bit as well. And obviously Viserys being shit. I liked at the beginning of this chapter, close to the beginning of this chapter, Jorah tells, or I think it's Jorah that says that, it is Jorah that says that the king, as in Viserys, could do with being shamed a little bit. And I feel like that's almost saying that to Robert as well, that he could do it, like having a bit of shame. Viserys calls prophecies, or any prophecy that she's going to get in Vaes Dothrak as a mummer's show, which he's probably right, in fairness. And Viserys keeps a sachet in the sleeve of his tunic, which is probably like smelling salts or perfume as well. But it did make me wonder, was there some sort of drug or something as well that he was taking? Because he does seem to be completely out of it half the time. And the biggest kind of thing that I had here from this chapter, Viserys, Dany says that Illyrio tried to warn Viserys that there wouldn't be a place for him in the Khalasar, which made me wonder, did Illyrio want to keep Viserys with him and not have him go with the Khalasar? I think that, yeah.
Maybe there was a different plot. Maybe the whole Doran Martell plot links into Illyrio having Viserys, and then it would have been easy then for them to kind of communicate with each other, and for him to marry Arianne to Viserys from Illyrio. I mean, if he goes off, it could just be that, you're not under my control anymore, and I don't know whether we can trust this Jorah or not.
I think like just the fact, I think we're supposed to assume that it's perfume that he carries in his sleeve, but just like we get a lot of descriptions of smells and potential some sort of drugs that perhaps Illyrio and Varys take. So it suggests to me that would be where Viserys gets most of his supplies, and that they're controlling him in other ways. It's like, those people that feed actors Coke or something. Do you know that kind of try and keep them, or some sort of pills or something? And then they can kind of mold them to whatever they want.
It could have been. Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say it's. I'm just trying to get the scale of the horses that are at effectively the gate at Vaes Dothrak, because this is the location that we're at. We're arriving at Vaes Dothrak to present Dany to the Dosh Colleen, because she's pregnant, and she seems to be. This is the 4th chapter of Dany, and she seems to be right in there with her feet right under the table with the Dothraki. And she's wearing the clothes, and she's adopted she's learning much more of the language, and her handmaidens are showing her how to deal with Drogo. There's just the scale of things. The 100-foot, the horses at the gate were 100 foot, and I'm just trying to think of like the equivalent of what that would look like in like. I know we saw that in the TV show, so I suppose we could get some kind of sense of the scale of it. But just things like that fascinate me, kind of markers.
Statue of Liberty? Would it be that high? Oh. How high is the Statue of Liberty? I have no idea.
I'm going to Google it. Because I don't think
I've seen the Statue of Liberty, and I don't think it's as big as you think. Or as I think. Well, maybe I'm.
I've seen it, but from like Wall Street kind of end of.
Where you're doing all your deals, Claire. All your polished deals.
How tall is Statue of Liberty?
Yeah, and actually, just the other thing that I noticed in this is that Sarah's, like, I notice it all the time, but the way he calls her slut, it's like, do you not know the meaning of that word, or is he? Did Viserys think, right, I'll marry her to the Khal, and when the Khal gets me what I want, I'll have him killed, and I'll just marry Dany, and like she'll be a slut then because she'll have slept with the Khal or whatever. But like, did he think that later on he'd just take Dany back to keep the line pure, or to keep the Targ line going or something? Like, the way he calls her slut all the time is just like, she's married. Like,
yeah,
I know I'm reaching probably, but
she's an instrument for him really. He's just completely bloody delusional. I mean, even Viserys in like previous chapter, Daenerys in previous chapters was like, you know, she very quickly came to the conclusion that he was never going to be a king.
No, and she starts thinking in this chapter
nothing.
that she could be the one.
Yes, yeah. But again, with numbers, 40,000 warriors in Khal Drogo's Khalasar, that's massive. So you can see in some way, shape or form what Viserys' motivation is. But I mean, he doesn't really need to be that nasty. Maybe it is because he's coming down from like withdrawal from whatever shiny pills Illyrio's been popping, you know, his way, who knows. But there's just a couple of things that stand out here in terms of the text for me. The Vaes Dothrak, that the prophecy is that all of the Khalasars will come back to the mother as one herd, and obviously that's the mother of mountains. But also we know later on in the story that Daenerys is referred to as Misa or Mysa, the mother. So that's, you know, a prophecy there of all of the Dothraki coming together under Daenerys, which is kind of where we're up to in the books at the moment, where like the last Dany chapter. I mean, it's kind of gone beyond that in the TV show, so I'm not really going to reference that too much, but I just thought that was interesting, that prophecy of all the Khalasars coming back together. Interesting that she talks about the Blood Riders, and again the tradition there about being bound to the Khal for life. I thought that that was quite interesting. I kind of compared in my mind the position of Blood Riders and again Kingsguard, those kind of like vows and protecting the leader. There's something that's more visceral about the Dothraki, that you are bound to that person for life. And I know that that's the same in the Kingsguard, but you're bound to the king. It doesn't necessarily have to be to that particular person. But I also think that this links into questions about the Tower of Joy and why the Kingsguard were there and who they were bound to and who their vows were to. So I just thought it was interesting that we have that Dothraki equivalent almost of the Blood Riders.
She says she won't have a Kingsguard for her child. Her child will have Blood Riders.
Yes.
Because Dany, presumably, we don't, but Dany knows the vows that both sides make. We don't know the full vow that the Kingsguard that they make. And coming off of Ned's chapter where Jaime has put family ahead of king, and attacked the hand of the king, it suggests it demonstrates her point that the Kingsguard can't be trusted. And obviously we've had that whole conversation then with Barristan earlier on as well. So yeah, it's a good point. Like that while it's horrifying, I can see why she would want Blood Riders instead of Kingsguard for her child and for herself potentially.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to distract Marwyn. I think it's only since the pregnancy that she's starting to refer to Drogo as her sun and stars. This seems to be the first time in this chapter that this was referenced.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's the bit about the eggs at the end. Being near the eggs makes her feel stronger. She feels the baby moving. She feels that the baby is a dragon. That was Marwyn yawning, sorry. And I just thought it was, you know, with Marwyn. She whacks him with a belt. Just get down 1 second. Sit there 1 second. Good boy. Sorry. Oh, let me get this point out. Okay, about the eggs at the end, and her fight with Viserys is that she picks the green egg, so she rejects Viserys, but she accepts Viserion. So that's like the change, really, of I reject my brother and possibly, you know, the whole what he thinks a Targaryen should be, and here's my green egg, which ultimately will become the dragon representation of her brother.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was quite interesting,
Yeah,
that it was that
particular
egg.
And it's I feel like we're only on Dany 4, and I actually have found a new appreciation for Dany. I'm not one of the people that actually hated Dany chapters, but I do feel when you read a Dany chapter, it does take you away from Westeros. And it's a bit jarring sometimes. And I think it's only when Arya starts going east that I feel then I don't mind it as much when I switch.
Yeah.
But this reread is definitely giving me a whole new appreciation for Dany. And this is only Dany 4, and I feel of all our characters, she shows the most growth, the most strength. Her character has changed the most. We learn so much about both sides of the world through this really, really young girl. And she feels young. I don't think he's imbuing her with any strengths that she couldn't have at that age. For her position, I think she is doing so well compared to Viserys, and it feels very, very natural, that growth. And we're speeding forward all the time in Dany's chapters. Like we're going through a lot of time when we get to a Dany chapter.
But at the same time, they're very rich. They don't feel a lot longer than other chapters. I don't think they are necessarily longer than other chapters.
I think this one was one of the shorter ones we did.
Yeah, I think so. But there is a lot. You get so much information about different cultures, you know, in that side of the world, and the different traditions, and how you can parallel that back to Westeros. And I mean, you get even more of that when other characters turn up in, you know, in her life. But yeah, I think I didn't really. I mean, I used to. I'm not a huge Dany fan, but I did quite enjoy Dany chapters, even the ones that regular fans found difficult, like the Myronese Knot and the Krasnan, low Rasnaz, or whatever, you know, those difficult names. I quite enjoyed them. I mean, I thought the political intrigue was quite interesting. The only thing about Dany is that long, slow, drawn out, will she ever go back to Westeros? And that kind of, a lot of people just get really frustrated with that.
I feel like this about Dany and Jon and Sansa to a certain extent, but particularly Dany. She'll deserve it if she gets the throne. Like she'll really, really have earned it.
Yes.
This chapter ends with she went to sleep dreaming of home. Is that Westeros or the House of the Red Door? Oh, what do you think?
I think she does tend to think that home is, in her heart, home seems to be the place with the red door. Whereas her sense of duty later on is Westeros is her home, because she's, you know, she's got all these titles and this is who she is. But I think when she goes to sleep thinking of home, that it's probably the place with the red door.
That was a trick question. The place with the red door is in Westeros. No, I don't know.
I think it might be.
I think it probably is. It makes sense that it would be. And then we're on to, I think this is my least favorite Bran chapter, I have to say. And I love Bran chapters. My least favorite so far in the book, because I don't know. I get quite a lot from this chapter, but I'd be interested to know what you think of it. This is Bran 5, which is chapter 37. And in this chapter, we meet proper wildlings for the first time. And what did you think about this chapter? I'm going to let you go.
Well, there's a few observations that I've made in this chapter. Couple of things about Theon. Did you get bored with this one? I did think that the way that Wintertown was described as, you know, there's loads and loads of accommodation there, but it's empty because it's just there for when the you know, the people of the north need to come and hunker down for the winter. And so I just made a reference that Wintertown is like Butlins for the north, like it's a seasonal thing. And then there are Butlins, by the way, is a holiday camp, kind of, what would you call it? Like for
like a summer. No, it's not. It's kind of like a summer camp, but for families, I guess.
Yeah. Interesting that clearly what they did was to take Bran out of Winterfell to give him the bad news about Ned being injured and his men being injured. But again, I think this just shows you how young and naive Rob was when we judge him for making silly decisions later on with Jane Westerling. Just he just leaves Bran on his own. He leaves Bran on his own, and then later on, when this catastrophe shit show happens with the wildlings, he's very easy to blame his men for not. But I thought you were just behind us. I thought, and it was like, no, Rob, you were the one that left your brother. He just seemed like a kind of impetuous teenager. Calm down, Marwyn. It's okay. Calm down. Mance's referenced again. I thought it was interesting, the wildlings reference to what Mance would do for the blood of Benjen Stark as a hostage. And then one of them says, do you think the White Walkers will care if you have a hostage? Which made me make a note of, do the others have Benjen? Do the wildlings know that the others have Benjen? It's just a very strange thing to say. What would Mance do for the blood of Benjen Stark? It's like a standoff thing. The others have got Benjen Stark. So if Mance has the blood of Benjen Stark, that gives him an advantage over the others. It just seems like something's going on there between the wildlings and the others. And clearly Benjen's still missing. And then the last bit really for me in this chapter is the wildling that, I think it's the wildling. The quote I've got is the wolves or the boy. Just move your head, Marwyn. I can't see my notes. I think it was one of the wildlings that was talking about whether or not to kill the wolves or the boy. And I've just made a note here that this is Theon's dilemma. This for me references the wolves, i.e. the Starks, or the boy. So it's like that is Theon's dilemma. It's the Starks or the Ironborn. It's the others, the other family, or yourself, your own family. Or is it loyalty, or is it dishonor? And it's this kind of like that to me kind of epitomizes Theon's dilemma, personality, the core of who Theon is. It's like, is he with the Starks, or is he, you know, is he for himself or for the Ironborn? So that just stood out to me as an interesting quote. The wolves or the boy. It's like which one?
I feel like Bran. The one thing that's really interesting about this chapter is Bran has these heightened senses. He's starting to get these heightened senses throughout the chapter, and you can draw like parallels. And I know you're a fan of the mirroring in the series as well, but between him and Arya and Ned and Cat and Jon, because he has these mantras when he's riding his horse, smooth as silk, which kind of reminds me of Arya when she's water dancing. He doesn't allow himself to fall into thinking about the Lannisters, and again we talked about that he's probably being manipulated there not to think about who attacked him, because that's to do with his ego and it'll prevent him from becoming this omnipotent force, which but also kind of reminds me of Ned, not to fall too much into thinking about the promises he's made Lyanna, so that we can stay clear of the mystery. But then there's also this kind of coldness to Bran at times, which kind of reminds me of Cat. And then there's like constantly references to Jon. And the big thing that I kind of picked up from this was I wondered, is it foreshadowing when he talks about but Jon gave me his fish on the way back to Winterfell, which made me wonder, will Jon give him a different fish, maybe a Tully, sometime in the future? And yeah, it's just, I just wondered about that. And yeah, he's reminded about Ned saying that no man is as dangerous as a deserter. And if you think about some of those people that I mentioned, they all are deserters at some stage. Like Arya deserts King's Landing and the Faceless Men, and Jon will desert the wildlings and the brothers, and you know, at potentially, like there's at different stages, everybody is a deserter, and how dangerous that makes them later on. And I wondered about the wildlings with the White Walkers as well. Yeah, and yeah, I wondered about that too, and the blood of Benjen Stark, kind of introducing, kind of planting these seeds that the Stark blood is really important, which made me wonder, is that why Bran hates Theon so much, or is this the beginnings of Bran having other senses, having like being able to intuitively know things about people? And the other thing that I found quite disturbing, by the way, I think Theon did the right thing with shooting the wildling. I think he had to shoot that wildling. And I wondered, was Rob's reaction to that, and especially when he says Jon was right about you, was that reaction, is that like the beginning of the beginning of the end for that Stark Greyjoy alliance? And one of the most disturbing things, which I kind of always put out of my head, but you have to recognize it, even though I do love the direwolves, they're man-eaters, and so are the dragons later on, and I just wonder, will there ever come a point where they'll eat the wrong person? So I don't know. And also during this chapter, I was thinking, yeah, this is all well and good, Rob, you know, looking after Bran and everything. What about Rickon? Where's Rickon? And it strikes me that he's such a voiceless character in this whole series. And I wondered, I don't know if we know yet, but I wondered, will Rickon be the prologue to A Dream of Spring? Because he's the only one of the Stark children that hasn't had a voice. That was...
Oh, gosh. Well, George has already said at a conference or, one of these fan convention things a couple of years ago that Jane Westerling will feature in the prologue for Winds of Winter.
Yeah. So I wondered, would it be Rickon for Dream of Spring? Because he's the only Stark child.
Oh, for Dream of Spring, yeah.
Because he's the only Stark child not to have he's actually the only member of that family not to have a voice. Yeah. I don't know why it jumped into my head in this chapter. Maybe it was just all the direwolves. I'm not sure.
During sort of towards the end of Dance, and this is massive spoilers and plot theories and things, but the Manderleys send Davos off to look for Rickon, don't they? And the idea is that Rickon is over in Skagos.
Yeah.
Which kind of, I think that Lord Manderley had pointed that out to Davos as part of that secret meeting when they had the whole facade at White Harbour with the phrase there. And I think Rickon is probably the character that's least had any kind of like family, or definitely influence from his father. And he's, you know, he's seen as like the wild child, and he's got Shaggy Dog. And he's also got Osha, who would probably he'd see as a mother, or as a mother figure. I mean, we don't even know if Rickon was that young that he doesn't even recall anything to do with Winterfell or who he is. But if Davos is going to find him, I think that that's going to be fascinating. I would love to know if we're going to get any of that in Winds of Winter, because I think it would be really difficult to go through an entire book without having a Davos point of view. So I think that will be really interesting if we get to see Davos running into Rickon on Skagos. And also, Davos is like the uber father figure. You know, he's lost all his sons, so he'd be in a good position to be a father figure. Potentially, Rickon is really kind of like in the market for a father, some sort of father figure. Who knows what's happened to Osha, whether she's still there or not. I'm dying to know what that storyline would be like.
I think Rickon's storyline, and we're not going to talk about the show, but I think it'll be the most different to the show.
Oh yeah.
Because and he can't really leave it at too much of a loose end with Rickon. So it has to be. I hope it's pretty clear what happens to him at the end, because right now I feel like, what is the point of the character at the moment? It's like,
well, there is also an argument that it's a Shaggy Dog tale. You know, the Rickon storyline just doesn't really go anywhere. He's just gone, and that's it. Which I would kind of understand if it wasn't for the fact that clearly Davos has been given this mandate by the Manderleys at White Harbour to go and find effectively their liege lord, because they are desperate to get rid of the Boltons and everything that's going on at Winterfell, and they don't know that Bran's still alive.
Yeah, I think the reason why I did think of Rickon in this chapter as well is because we have Osha, and we get like that idea that I like, because I can't think of her without thinking of Rickon.
Yeah.
And like, there's definitely alliances building in the north between the settled northerners and the wildlings, and it'll have to be confirmed throughout. And I feel like maybe Rickon will be central to moving that along even further as a Stark in the north. But I don't know. I feel like, I don't know, at the moment I feel like this guy is going to need a lot of therapy. Like,
just while we're going completely off track with Rickon, are you any good at converting feet and meters? I can tell you that the Eiffel Tower is 300 meters.
Oh, that's a lot of feet. I'm not any good.
Is that anything like 100 feet? Is Ivan around too?
I'd say you'd want to, wait now, I'd say you'd want to multiply it by about 3, isn't it? Let me see. There's about, let me see.
So the Eiffel Tower is that? It's 300 meters.
Wait now. Meters to feet. So how big did she say the Khalasar was? The horses.
The horses outside that are 100 feet.
That's, so if it's 3, so 100 feet. So it's the Eiffel Tower is 300 meters. That's like 900, almost 1,000 feet. 980.
Oh. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Big Ben is 96 meters.
Oh no, it's much smaller. So
okay.
Yeah, so it's 30 meters. So that's not that high.
No. Yeah. Leaning Tower of Pisa is 57 meters.
I suppose it'd be a 3 or 4 story building all the same.
Yeah.
The statues. Yeah, so it'd be very big for the time, right? Maybe more, maybe 5 stories of a building.
It's quite pretty
So,
big. Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty big.
Sorry to completely go off track.
No, that's good. Yeah, so that was it for Bran for me. I don't know if there was anything else I wanted to say there about Bran. I think that was everything, yeah. Just there's another line from that when the fight scene is happening, it says, "In a moment, Bran saw everything." And I just feel like throughout Bran's chapters, there's just more and more clues about what's going to happen to him. And the next chapter then is a Tyrion chapter. And as with the last couple of Tyrion chapters, I haven't taken a huge amount from this chapter in terms of like theories or anything like that. I feel like Tyrion is as lost as we are in this chapter. And I thought that his treatment by Mord at the beginning, and like Mord, who's like clearly physically and mentally disabled, and he's not the full shilling at all, and he bullies Tyrion and gets a lot of fun out of it, and it just kind of it gives you this like it gives you an impression of what Tyrion's life is like living as a dwarf in this age, like that he is just completely, everybody just shits on him, no matter what position.
Well, if it wasn't for his name and his family and his entitlement, quite frankly, then yes, this is the kind of treatment that he could expect. And we see some of that later on in Tyrion's character development, where he has lots of different experiences, and especially when he travels across the water, and I think he gets nastier. he gets nastier as things progress, because I think he can see that he's been shielded by his family and his entitlement thus far. I've said that Maud is like a nastier version of Hodor.
Yes, yeah.
He's like, same sort of characteristics as Hodor, this kind of lumbering, like you say, there's obviously lots of disabilities and things there.
He says that he's as predictable as he was stupid, which kind of makes me think that Tyrion has seen these kinds of people before. He's kind of experienced this kind of thing before. Kind of reminds me of his cousin with the rocks. What's his name? The big thing here is what Tyrion is noticing compared to what Kat is missing. And the big thing for me, which is why I went a bit overboard with the blue, he talks about the blue people, like there's something graffiti written on the wall or something about jump into the blue or embrace the blue or something like that.
The blue is calling. The blue is calling.
That's it. And when he sees Lysa when they go to see Lysa, she's wearing blue and she's surrounded by suitors, and we're just references to her blue eyes. And blue is obviously quite a striking color at this time because it's not a natural color. It's there's a lot of symbolism, as you know, with blue. Go watch Clare's blue video. But she's wearing blue. Now, I don't know what the tradition is at the time. She's surrounded by suitors and she's wearing blue, and she's just a recently made widow. What is the what's the kind of the rules around that at the time? How quick is that?
Protocols. Why isn't she wearing black?
Well, I think they do wear black, right? I feel like there's some reference to mourning later on.
So, I think Cersei's in black when with Joffrey.
So why, is that not a massive red flag with Lysa? That she's instantly surrounded by suitors. She doesn't seem to be in any sort of mourning at all. What's going on there? This is almost like a joyful experience for her. Obviously, she's delighted. She's a Lannister or whatever. Maybe she feels like she's off the hook. Maybe nobody will suspect her. But I feel like Tyrion, and I know he's not necessarily taking it in, but he's already thinking about who did this to Bran. It's definitely not Cersei and Jaime. I don't like being set up as a cat's paw. What the hell is going on? This is so sloppy. Why is she wearing blue? Why is she surrounding herself by all these pervy veil men? Things that Kat should be noticing, I feel. And she does start to notice it later on, Kat, I know that. But and Tyrion gambles with Lysa. He feels that it'll be easier to gamble with Lysa and probably win his freedom through Lysa than it will be with Kat, because he's obviously noticed all of these flaws in her. But yeah, that's really all I had there. That you know, he's definitely noticed.
Just talking about Lysa, I made a note in the previous Cat chapter that I'd forgotten that I had here, that we obviously, again, an introduction of another character through, and you've got to think about whose point of view it is, who's introducing this character, and this time it's Cat. And you just immediately get the sense of Lysa being completely unstable, like totally unstable. There's a lot of Cat kind of comparing a sister to her as like a lesser version of her, and like, you know, the only thing that was recognizable as a Tully was her hair. Interesting that it's very clear that Lysa doesn't trust any of her own men. She doesn't trust anyone around her at all, like not even her own Maester. And, you know, she puts this act on in front of them so she can't be herself in front of even her own men that are around her. And that she's got this, you know, she's overprotective of this person who's supposed to be protector of the realm, protector of the Vale. But yeah, just going back to the Sky Cell, this, and I knew it was coming because I remember reading it, and I think I've actually skipped it in previous rereads because it's just so grisly for me. For somebody, just the description of it, for somebody who is scared of heights, is horrific. Especially the worst bit in this chapter is when they describe another set, a cell that Tyrion wasn't in, but that he could have been put in, that was even shorter and tilted. Was just like, oh my God, the fact that you wouldn't be able to sleep, you would. That's that quote that's on the wall, the blue is calling, and it's like, and the fact that Maud says give it 20 days, give it 30, maybe in your case even 50, but you will go to the, you know, the blue will get you, you will find yourself in that position. And it was like, oh my God. So yeah, I just want to point out that this is a horrific chapter for somebody to read who's got a fear of heights.
I mean, the hypothermia would probably get you before that. Yes.
Oh my God, just everything about it, and the description of how warm he feels when he finally gets his coat back on again. Interesting here again that like poor Tyrion has these immediate hopes that his brother's going to be riding to his rescue, and that's actually not really necessarily the case. I think what's happening with it's interesting. It's interesting what you were saying previously about this relationship with the siblings. I mean, we know we've got Jaime and Cersei, but it's where Tyrion's kind of thrown into the mix as well. And it's like, does he get special dispensation because he's a Lannister? Is there something there about, because the next chapter you can see Cersei really being affronted by the fact that her brother's been captured. But again, is it because of the name, or is it because of is there something about Tyrion that actually Cersei and Jaime feel like protective over? It's a difficult one. But he certainly feels that his siblings will be taking action because of what's happened, and he the other thing is, he says to Maud that Casterly Rock is full of gold, and it's like, we don't necessarily know that that's the case. And I know, again, there are theories that actually there is no gold at Castle Rock. But yeah, just that first bit of the chapter where he's in the sky cell is just horrific.
But it's horrible because then you get that instant like description of Lysa being perfumed and powdered in blue. And again, it made me think of Illyrio and Varys and secrets and hiding the truth and all that kind of thing. And also the fact that like young Robin Aaron is like is it Robert or Robin? I get confused with the show now. It's Robin, right? No, it's
Robert, but she calls him Sweet Robin.
Oh, that's why I get confused. But do they call him Robin in the show?
I think they do call him Robin in the show. Yeah,
that's right. See, now I'm getting confused with the show. Yeah. But he's 6, and you know, in the last chapter, Bran is saying as 8, he's almost a man grown, and this kid is going around with a doll. It's like, this guy can't be Lord of the Eyrie, joking. Like, Rob is barely able to handle Winterfell, and the Eyrie just sounds like a complete, like, complex kind of system. So this is the chapter that made me wonder, will we see the Eyrie again in terms of a battle or something like that? Because Tyrion says it's not impregnable, it's just inconvenient or something. So like to get it can be taken, it's just inconvenient. And it made me wonder, will there be something later on with the Eyrie? Will somebody still be there, or will somebody retreat to there, or the only way to get there will be a dragon or something? Because it would be amazing if Littlefinger was dropped through Moon Door, but I know that's not gonna happen. That'd be cool. But so that's all I had for that chapter. And obviously the Kingslayer isn't allowed to come to his defense, so Bran does, which is interesting. And then we're finally on to the chapter. And I was thinking what we could do is just break this up in 2 parts, talk about the Tower of Joy stuff, and then talk about the Robert Cersei encounter. Because this is chapter 39. It is Eddard 10. I think we're officially halfway through the book at this stage, by the end of this chapter. And Claire, do you want to take it away, talking about your
well, the aspect of the chapter that isn't the dream, again, just referencing what I said about Cersei being pissed off that Cat had taken Tyrion, and that there is something there that's like, it's a sibling thing. In reference to the dream, there were 8 graves in the dream, and also there were 8. Cersei references that there were 8 people that had died in that encounter. With Ned and outside the Tower of the Hand. So, just the fact that there were 8 people died in both of those scenarios. The question that I asked before, which is, why is Ned dreaming this dream now after so many years? What is it that's triggering the dream? And then the dream itself, I don't really have as much as I thought I would. I've just made some notes really about that it's Lyanna in a bed of blood. First of all, I was ready to say that this is just a dream. We can't interpret this very clearly, because everybody knows what dreams are like. It's kind of like, you dream that you're in, I was in this house, but it wasn't this house, it was an old house that I used to live at. That's kind of the nature of what dreams are like. But actually, Ned himself references a couple of times in the dream as in life. So it's like, well, this actually is a pretty accurate dream in that case. So he names the people that were there, the 3. So it was basically, the battle was Ned and 6 men, so 7 on his side facing the 3 Kingsguard. Just so many questions about the Kingsguard, the quotes that they give. our knees do not bend, the Kingsguard do not flee, then or now. What does that mean? What do you mean by then or now? Why were the Kingsguard at that location? Why were they not protecting effectively Aerys? Why were they there? Why did, I mean, going back to the vows of the Kingsguard, which has been referenced quite a bit during this chunk of chapters, the purpose and the values that the Kingsguard have, and how that, you know, even referencing the Blood Riders, the Dothraki Blood Riders, but it's about protecting the king. That's their job. That's what they're supposed to do. So when they're talking about we do not flee and we have our vows and our knees do not bend, then what are they even doing there in the first place? And I know that people, oh, it's because Lyanna's had Rhaegar's heir and she was pregnant, and that's why they were there, because they were protecting the king. But
all the more
didn't know that Aerys was dead
Yeah.
yet. I mean, if I don't, that's the bit that I don't quite understand. And the other big question that I've got is, how the hell did Ned pull the tower down?
Yes.
It's a tower. That just, like, unless there's some kind of magical shit going on there, I'd fail to see how a man can pull down a tower and use the bricks to bury like 8 graves. So what we know from the numbers there were 7 facing 3, so there was 10 of them, 7 versus the 3 Kingsguard, and there were 8 graves, because of the 10 that were involved in this, only Ned and Howland survived it. So that's that, you know, that's the encounter. That's how it's described, in a very kind of blurry, milk of the poppy induced dream from Ned. Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, so I have quite a different perspective to this because I'm a lucid dreamer. So I read this in a bit of a different way, because I can recognize having dreams about memories where I've changed things in the dream that are contrary to what happened in reality, and I can change them by my own will. But I get confused then when I wake up. So I had a really lucid dream last night, and I was like, did that happen, or did I just wish that would happen? I had to go Google something just to make sure.
Wow.
So I don't know if he pulled down the Tower of Joy. I wonder, just speaking from my perspective, I wonder, is that a wish fulfillment thing? And I think maybe the Tower of Joy is still there. And I'm not entirely sure if he's been sent the dream to remind him of what happened, or he said it's an old dream, so he's had this dream before. But I mean, I've regularly have dreams where I can change the outcome, or I can will a different thing to happen in the dream. So him pulling down the Tower of Joy.
So you're aware that you're dreaming when you're dreaming?
Yes, I am, yeah. So he definitely seems to be as well, which makes me think it's a lucid dream. Because he says, as you said, it wasn't the dream as it had been in life. It feels like we're going through the dream as he's having it.
Right.
For me, I don't think it doesn't feel like he's recalling the dream while awake. But I could be wrong.
Interesting.
So, because I can definitely remember dreams very clearly, but this seems to be like too clear. The other thing that makes me think about it is, at the beginning we get like proud Martin Kinsella, faithful Theo Wool. We get information about Ethan Glover being Brandon Squire, soft Mark Rysell, gentle of heart, and then the Crannog man Howland Reed. That's it. We don't get anything description-wise for Howland Reed. Nothing positive, nothing negative. So what does that tell us about Howland Reed? Is it just because he's alive? He doesn't necessarily feel anything towards this guy. It's a very strange thing That the one person who survived this event with him, we don't get anything from Ned about him.
Just his name.
Just this, and just, you know, that he survived. So I feel the biggest question for me is over Howland Reed. And the next biggest question for me is, and something that in the fandom, a lot of people focus on Arthur Dane and Gerald Hightower because they're famed warriors. Not an awful lot of people focus on Oswell Went. Now, Oswell Went is an interesting character because Kat's mother is a Went. So Oswell Went must be related to Kat.
Yes.
Which means that Ned has had to kill one of Kat's relatives to get to Lyanna.
Yes.
And has that ever come up between them? So, like, you know...
No, it hasn't. But
so
they would have known that before they got married.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, Kat's mother died when Kat was very young. She was given birth to Kat's brother, who also died at the same time. So I think, is Kat the oldest, or is Edmure the oldest? I think it's Edmure, but it could be Kat.
I think it's Kat.
Is it?
I think
Kat.
he's a younger brother.
Then.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, okay. Yeah, because he's a little brother. Because I know that there's a theory that anyone who's a little brother could be the Valonqar.
So it's not like we don't get any memories of her mother, but it's not like she wasn't old enough to have a couple of memories of her mother, and yet we don't really get anything about Kat's mother. But she was a Went, and she was related to that guy. So, although we're not sure
was there anything that, because there was a couple of the our knees do not bend and the Kingsguard do not flee then or now. Was that Dane and Hightower saying those quotes?
Let me just check. Yeah, Arthur Dane says our knees. Yeah, and Gerald. We don't get anything from Went, which I think is, oh no, he says, woe to the usurper if we had been. So now the Wents, they had Harrenhal, right? And they lost Harrenhal. So yeah, it's just a...
Why is it only 3 of them there? Is it because they were like Rhaegar's friends?
Also, you can't have 3 Kingsguard, you know, a highborn lady who may or may not be pregnant, without staff, without people looking after them, without squires, without, you know, like, it's like none of these highborn people travel anywhere on their own. So I assume that's how Ned knows that they're there. So the other thing you were asking about is what made him have this dream. So obviously the milk of the poppy, it may be somebody sending him this dream. Maybe he needs to remember something. Maybe it's to do with bastards, to do with Robert, all that kind of thing. I think there might be 2 things. Jory's death, because he references Jory in that while he's having that dream. And also Jaime, it feels like he equates what he did at the tower. He repeats, you know, 7 against 3 over and over, or well, twice or 3 times. It feels like he equates what he did at the tower to the Kingsguard to what Jaime did to the Starkmen. Just in the last chapter, that it feels like there seems to be a guilt at the dishonor of outnumbering the Kingsguard. That it feels like it wasn't fair.
Yeah, he doesn't see it as like a huge victory of, like, you know, that's, I mean, I know that there's sadness at the death of his sister, but he thinks of the whole thing, sadly. The fact that, you know, the Kingsguard are honourable, and, you know, everybody who's a knight aspires to be Kingsguard.
But there's motivating factors when, if it is a lucid dream, like I think it might be, there's motivating factors to, and lots of writers get lucid dreams actually, but there's motivating factors to, when you have a lucid dream, there's a huge emotional response, and it tends to be dominated by one emotion. And I feel like it's not just sadness. I feel like there's a guilt here. There's something not quite right with the way he's thinking of it. And at the end, and this is why I think he's describing the dream as it happens, because he imagines Lyanna saying Lord Eddard, and then the Lord Eddard turns into, it's not Pycelle, it's somebody else, isn't it? No, it's one of his men calling him, waking him. And also he's been in and out of consciousness for 6 days or 7 nights or something like that. And 6 days and 7 nights. Yeah, so it's Poole that wakes him, actually. So I wondered, is he just hearing Lord Eddard because Poole is saying it? Or did Lyanna actually say Lord Eddard? Which would have been weird.
I don't know who knows. Who's like, do the Kingsguard know that Jaime killed Aerys at this particular point when this exchange is happening? Do they know that Rhaegar is dead? Do they know that excuse me? Do they know that Robert has killed Rhaegar? Do they know that Jaime has killed Aerys? Or not? Has news got to them yet? I mean,
are they don't have anyone to send ravens, right?
Well, Ned says, I looked for you on the Trident, but you weren't there. And that's when the guy went, says, you know, woe to the usurper if we'd have been there. So they must have known that.
Also, how does Rhaegar get from Dorne to the Trident without being intercepted? How does he
on his own, by the sound of it as well?
Yeah, like how does he not meet with forces? Do you know what I mean? Like how does he not?
Yeah.
I don't really understand. Does he like sail around and come in another way? Like I don't know how that works.
No, I don't know. No, I don't know. A lot of the yeah, it's very the traveling.
Yeah, I'm suspicious about Ned's memory here, because he goes through the 7 versus 3 thing, like he feels guilty about that, but he's up against 3, definitely 2, but arguably 3 of the finest warriors in the kingdom. 7 people isn't necessarily enough to take them down, but he's confident that he's going to take them down, which means that his dream is being informed by hindsight, and the way he feels about it is being informed by hindsight and memory. So it's not like he's reliving it necessarily, like without that knowledge. He knows what's going to happen, and that's informing how he feels about it, and he feels guilty about taking them down. And it also makes me wonder, like you said, they have an oath to protect the king, okay? So say that oath does transfer to whatever child is in that tower, if there is a child there. Is it not more beneficial to try and use diplomacy to get out of this situation rather than fighting? Like how, once Ned gets inside, if Ned gets inside, like, or if Ned kills even one of them, they're at a huge disadvantage. Like what is the end game for them? Like what, like are they going to stay in the Tower of Joy forever? Like where is the end game now that Rhaegar is dead with them?
There's so many questions, so many things that I don't understand about this. Like why those 3? Why only 3? Why the whole Kingsguard not? Where are the rest of them? Why would you split up the Kingsguard? Yeah, exactly. But why would you, why would you split them up?
Why send the best of their Kingsguard? Like, is it not more important to take down Robert at the Trident?
Why was Ned so confident that they'd be able to beat 3 Kingsguard, including one of them being Sword of the Morning?
Exactly. So that
straight away is like an extra 3 men.
Yeah, there's a lot that doesn't add up about it. His feelings towards Howland Reed. Yeah, there's a lot that doesn't add up. It also, do they expect Ned to think that she's still a prisoner? Like, yeah, it's
it says blue petals blew across the sky. So I always thought that it was, unless do we get another reference before Ned's demise of this of this scene of the Tower of Joy, or is this the main? No, there is, because there's something about him going to, like, where he's holding a hand or something like that.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, there must be another reference.
And there's also, a storm of rose petals blew across a blood-streaked sky, as blue as the eyes of death.
Yeah.
A White Walker, right? Because that's the only death that I know that has blue eyes. That's not a common saying.
No, exactly. So,
yeah, there's. I feel like people put too much weight on the accuracy of his memory. I mean, the fact that he thinks, or he has a memory of taking down a tower, it suggests that there was either a whole network of people around them, or also. So Robert, I guess this is a good time to move on to the Robert Cersei thing as well, because Robert lets Jaime away with murdering 8 innocent men, or well, not 8 innocent men. How many Starks? 5 Starks or something.
Yeah.
And he's just gone now. So that's it, Robert. We're supposed to put that behind us. Like, is that what he did with Ned? Because Ned basically went down and killed 3 Kingsguard, and didn't come back with Lyanna, presumably, or didn't come back with a live Lyanna. So did he just let Ned just do what he wanted? Did he, like, why didn't Robert go himself? I can never understand why Robert didn't go himself. Why didn't he, because he doesn't seem to have wanted the throne, so why didn't he just go, Ned, you have that, I'm going to get your sister? Especially as we had that comment earlier on where Ned said he loved her more. Like, he loved her more than Ned did. So it's, the scene as well where, the idea that the dream leaves him as weak as a kitten is kind of interesting, because he's instantly at a disadvantage facing Robert and Cersei when they come into the room.
Yeah.
And Robert, and that whole thing with Robert beating Cersei and she doesn't make a sound.
Yeah.
Very creepy. That really creeps me out.
Yeah.
But and I don't know if there's anything else I want to say about the dream, but other than that, he said he thinks that having it is a bad omen. And I wonder, has he had that before and something bad happened?
I wonder if if the dream that he's had previously, which he refers to as being like, it feels as though it's been a long time, years, since he's had this particular dream that's based on a memory of an event that happened, or again, it could be one of those things where it's like it was a tower, but it wasn't this tower, it was another tower. It was my sister, but not this sister, another sister. It's what dreams can be like that, where you feel confident that you're in a particular location, but actually it's you also know that it's a different location. It's strange. But the fact that he's not had that dream for so long, and I know that there are certain things like recurring dreams, and you have, especially childhood, you can have the same dreams over and over again, dream that, common dreams, like dreaming that you're flying and all of that kind of stuff, and you can, those recurring dreams. But this feels like a dream that's had a different incarnation previously when he's had the dream before in the past. And I think you're right, this is very much linked to the very recent memory of this incident that's caused this injury and 5 of it, or however many of his men, to die. That's like, clear and present danger seeping into this dream.
There's also something that you mentioned from the first chapter that we discussed this evening, that with the shadows in Eddard 8, and there's a line that I didn't notice before, but it says Ned's wraiths moved up beside him with shadow swords in hand. They were 7 against 3. So wraiths are like ghostly creatures. So his wraiths, his ghosts. So there's obviously a sense of guilt of bringing all the Stark men to King's Landing that Jaime has now killed for him for no reason. But he's also thinking of the Stark men that he bought to see Lyanna, which kind of ended up being for no reason. because they didn't save Lyanna in the end. And the shadow swords, is that Howland Reed? Is that like the weird Crannog men and their magical powers? And then he has when Poole is waking him up, he imagines him as a shadow over him. It feels like I was asking earlier on, the price he had to pay to keep Lyanna's promise. It feels like it's the burden of guilt, the burden of dishonor,
unnecessary death.
Yeah, that has followed him, and now has followed him to King's Landing as well. The amount of blood that has been shed in Stark's name, and like a whole battle, like a whole the whole continent was at a battle for Robert's rebellion in Stark's name. I wonder, do you think he knew that Lyanna didn't run away with Rhaegar? Or sorry, do you think he knew that Rhaegar hadn't kidnapped Lyanna? Do you think he suspected?
Just the fact that he thinks, I mean, he's not a pushover, Ned. He gets quite aggressive with Littlefinger, and when his honour is put into question, and he's got balls to have that confrontation with Robert. So he's not scared of shying away from saying how he really feels or demonstrating his strength. So I don't.
There's actually a lot.
Lost my train of thought.
There's actually a lot of comparisons between Jaime and Ned as characters. Jaime shows his love for his sister in another way, but it is quite over the top. I feel Ned's love for Lyanna goes a little bit above the beyonds at times, especially in the fact that he doesn't confide in Cat who she is. But again, maybe that comes back to the fact that Cat has Went blood in her. I don't know. But the other thing is that this love of sister, but also at the end of this chapter, Robert says he threatens to make Jaime hand of the king, which is very like, Ned doesn't feel like he should be hand of the king, because he's got all of this baggage as well, and he doesn't feel smart enough. So
there is quite a lot of mirroring with Jaime and Ned, actually.
Yeah,
they're both that going back to them both being in the throne room that time.
They both protect bastards.
Oops. Sorry, please. I don't know if I can hear you. Just say something.
Can you hear me?
Sorry.
All right, no problem. The fact that Jaime is also kind of protecting bastards as well. Can you hear me now?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah, sorry. These earphones aren't the best, and Marwyn keeps getting tangled up in them. I've just remembered what I was going to say about does Ned think that Lyanna was abducted or kidnapped or whatever? I think the fact that the way I feel about it is there are references that Ned has in like current times with Arya and Lyanna. Everything that you hear about Arya, everything that you hear about Lyanna, and especially the references to how similar Arya is, you just wouldn't imagine Arya being the kind of person to run off with a prince. It just seems far too much like Sansa actually would do something like that, not Arya. So if in temperament and personality Arya is similar to Lyanna, then I think it would have been more of maybe Rhaegar had a plan or a plot against his father. Maybe Lyanna felt that was an honourable cause. Maybe because she was at Harrenhal and she could see how the Crannogman stood up to, you know, and she defended him and was the mystery knight. Maybe she had this unfailing sense of justice and felt that Rhaegar should have been should be king, and that they all needed to get rid of Aerys. So maybe she just sided with him politically. Maybe it wasn't a, you know, a romantic match made in heaven. I who knows? Got her pregnant. Who knows? You know, maybe Robert had raped her previously. Maybe somebody else had raped her. Maybe it was, who knows? Rhaegar had found out that something terrible had happened to Lyanna, and he was rescuing her from something that had happened. There's so many variables, but the interesting thing is that Ned doesn't seem to have any anger or resentment or hatred in his heart towards Rhaegar. Yet he seems to feel a lot of guilt, and he sided with Robert. Maybe he feels that he shouldn't have been on Robert's side in the rebellion. Maybe who knows? There's definitely a lot of guilt and shame, and I'm not sure that what everybody thinks Lyanna is there for. She married and got pregnant, and Rhaegar is the father, and they ran off and the star-crossed lovers. I just can't see.
It's not George's MO. No,
it just doesn't seem to be that kind of character that Lyanna's portrayed as, especially if she's if Arya's likened to her so much, because we know in the story as readers exactly what kind of person Arya is, and she's not she doesn't want to be a lady or marry a prince or be swept off her feet in some romantic, she just wouldn't do that. And it just doesn't feel as though, although we know Lyanna much less than we do Arya, it just doesn't feel as though that's what happened. I think something else happened that maybe we don't know about.
I think so too, and I think it's not that's the other thing that Jaime and Ned have in common. Of all the characters in the book, they probably think most highly of Rhaegar, the two of them. And it is yeah, I don't know if we get that kind of love story ever if it does happen, if that is true, if Lyanna and Rhaegar are a love story for the ages, it's the only one we'll get in the series. Apart from Jaime and Cersei.
Yes.
They're the only two, really. And even then, like Cersei, because George is very frank at giving us what people actually think about their partners. And yeah, it is interesting actually that we do have this is the first week that we haven't had a Jon chapter. So interesting that this is the main focus of our attention here, because he does take Jon away from us for quite a chunk. So it's probably done on purpose. But yeah, the Tower Joy is going to be one of those things that people will talk about. And I would say that the way they do it in the show, I think is very different to what we're going to get in the series. Apart from maybe the Howland Reed thing, I'm not going to say any more than that. But I do find it very suspicious, the Howland Reed thing, because he's the only person alive that can tell us more about it. And the fact that Ned builds these cairns, these monuments, using the bricks of the tower, I think that's a metaphor. I think he's built them in his mind. He's built up these kind of
it would be incredible if, again, going back to what I said before about George saying that Jane Westerling would be in the prologue for the next book. And if you think about the sequence of the prologues being it's a Maester, and then it's Beyond the Wall, and it's a Maester, then it's or Citadel. So it's either a Wildling or Beyond the Wall, or it's the Maester or the Citadel, and they alternate between each book. So we, you know, Faramir sits the six skins beyond the wall. So now we're due a Maester or a Citadel location. I think it's probably more going to be a Maester. And also the other thing is somebody always dies in the prologue. So what we've got is three things there. We've got three clues. We've got Jane Westerling is going to be in the prologue. A Maester is likely to be in the prologue. Probably one that we don't know and that we've never met before. So that's something to bear in mind. And thirdly, somebody's going to die.
Yeah.
So
and
my
she's
theory,
a speaker, right?
yes, yeah. So my theory is it's a point of view of a Maester at Greywater Watch. Wow, because like finally we've managed to find Greywater Watch, and that's where Jane Westerling has escaped to. So in that chapter, that could be quite rich because you could have is it Glover and one of the Mormonts that Rob sent on the mission to go and tell Helen Reed about his will. So there's that. Then she has arrived, you know, Jane Westerling is going to feature. Why would she feature? Why would there be a Maester and Jane Westerling in the same chapter? Maybe because she's pregnant and I know that this is like, you know, a lot of people would say, oh, what's the point of bringing in yet another baby? And yet, you know, it's like Rob's dead. So what's the point? What would be the point of this baby? But maybe she dies or the baby dies in childbirth, or maybe the Maester is killed or has to die for the knowledge of this is like, you know, the heir of the King of the North, blah, blah, blah. it could, you know, who knows? But there's a few.
There has to be another generation.
Yes, yeah, that's true. But it's like the you know, what potential there is for those three things. Jane Westerling, which George has said, we know that it's going to be a Maester, and we know these are three pretty much cast iron facts that we know about the prologue in the next book. Those three things are going to happen. Your mind can go into, oh, well, it's this, that, you know, and I think if it's a Maester that we don't know, I think it's going to be a house that we haven't really spent a lot. I mean, would there be a Maester? Would they have a Maester at Greywater Watch?
I mean,
Has Mira or Jojen ever talked about there being a Maester?
I mean, there usually is, right? I mean, it's often taken as a given, right? To have communication and a doctor and all that kind of thing.
I mean, it could be that it's Marwyn, not this Marwyn, but Marwyn the Mage. Maybe that's the Maester in the prologue. But where and why and how would he come into contact with Jane Westerling? Why is she even in? Why are we ever seeing her again in this story? Are we going to see the Blackfish as well? Is she going to be there? I am desperate to read this prologue.
The other thing I actually wanted to mention as well is he says he has 8 tombs basically at the Tower of Joy. That's not necessarily the 3 Kingsguard and all of his men. I mean, as I said, other people have to be there.
Yeah.
You know, there could have been a Maester. There could have been, you know, a lot of people there that kind of that need to help as all these highborn operate. I mean, they don't necessarily, like, highborn do not operate in a vacuum. They need like people around them. And
who's going to take Lyanna's bones back to the north?
And why can't they take anybody else's bones? Down a tower, he can drag a few bags of bones. Like, yeah. And also, I mean, we will get into it further on as we get more information, but the Dane thing never made sense to me. How do the Danes still think of Ned in a positive way?
Yeah.
Having taken down their pride and joy. And why, like, if they help, later, if they help later with John and, you know, or whatever, baby or whatever, while or whatever, like, I think that they get the say it for me, the wet nurse comes from the Danes, right?
Yeah.
So if they are willing to do that for Ned, why doesn't Ned at least take back the body of Arthur Dane? I mean, it can't be that far. Like it's not that far, right, from the Tower of Joy. So I there's a lot of...
I'm just beginning to wonder now if Ned was ever really on Robert's side.
I'm totally with you on that. I'm beginning to wonder, was he ever even on his family side? Sometimes.
Yeah.
Because like, this is a boy that basically grew up under the tutelage of John Arryn. And I have so many questions about Ned, because he doesn't think about his brother or father ever. He thinks only about his sister. Like, why don't you think about your brother?
One time that he thought of Brandon was when he was losing his temper with Cat earlier on in this book, and he says that he should have had everything. His daughter should have been queen, and that he resents.
It makes me wonder, did Ned want to go to the Wall? I wonder, is that where Ned wanted to be? Or, like, I mean, it can't be any worse than living at the Vale. So, like, I mean,
maybe you thought, well, it doesn't matter what I'm doing here. It doesn't matter that I've dishonoured this, or I've, fallen in love with the Shara Dane, or I've done whatever it was that happened that we are not clear about in the text. Maybe he thought to himself, well, it doesn't really matter because I'm going to end up at the Wall anyway.
Yeah.
And all of that will be wiped clean.
Do you think we'll get any more answers to this in the next book? Do you think this will always be kind of a mystery, or do you think we'll ever get a Dane perspective on this? More of a Dane perspective on this, I should say. Because it
feels like, I mean, it's a house that, again, along with the Reeds, the Danes are another house that are mentioned as a illustrious house with this rich history, but we've not really, we don't really know too much about it apart from tales and legends. And
yeah, I mean, it opens up, I mean, and the next chapter is a cat chapter, so again we're following like this we're following on to a cat chapter, and again it makes me think that the last cat chapter had a lot of mention of Hoster, and I feel Hoster is we're going to get a lot of mention of Hoster in the next chapter. Why does Hoster marry a Went from the disgraced Wents from Harrenhal? Not disgraced, but like the fallen line. Like, why? He's Hoster Tully. He can marry anybody. Why did it Went? And what does he think about Ned fathering a child south and killing a Went? Like, where? Like, what did he think about this?
Everybody should be hating Ned. Everyone should be hating Ned. You know, the Danes, the Tullys.
Yeah. It doesn't. So is all of this littered with false memories on Ned's part?
Yeah.
So sorry to ruin the Tower of Joy for people, but I just wonder, like, how accurate is his memory of it? Is his dream of it here? Especially the bit about pulling down the tower. It's a red flag as to something's not right about this.
I completely agree.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all I had on the epic
me
Tower
too.
of Joy. We have another 3 Ed chapters next week. But we're coming up. Then it's a big break from Ed, actually. So we're going from Cat 7 to Ed 13, and then there are only 3 Ed chapters left, but we still have a lot of book to go. So we know what's coming up for Ed, obviously. But yeah, we're going from Cat 7 to the end of Ed 13. So
we've got a Jon chapter coming up soon. There's a Sansa chapter and a Daenerys chapter,
and I think we have another Tyrion chapter as well coming up. So I'm not sure if we have an Arya one, but yeah. So
No, we don't. No, no Arya.
no Arya. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Arya is not for another while actually. It's a good bit to Arya, now that I think of it. But yeah, so hope you can join us next week. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or anything like that. Thank you to everybody who joined us in the chat, Jules, Sonny, AU, and Marco. And yeah, thank you to everybody. Thanks a million, Claire, and thanks, Marwan.
You're welcome.
I'm glad to be fireworks didn't drive me insane. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. Enjoy your week and see you next Sunday.
Bye.